So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mike. And Mike Finney is from the state, from Saginaw area, right? And Flint, okay. And but went to run track and go to school at Saginaw Valley. Brad Lavity's another Saginaw Valley person. He said you guys are former athletes there. So, and then Mike has been in the state, worked for MEDC, worked in industry. In Flint, was it? Or is that what brought you to Rochester? I'm trying to remember. Saginaw. Okay. We'll get it all straight. But it was in the... Mike and I go way back. And then he went to... He was in Rochester for a while after being MEDC, and then the Spark folks had the foresight, a lot of it was Rick Snyder, to bring Mike to run Spark, and that was a very successful endeavor, and many of us have been connected with Spark. And then when Governor Snyder was looking for somebody to help focus the energy on creating jobs and run MEDC, he appointed Mike. And Mike is doing that. He's also part of the governor's cabinet and has some other roles, which maybe he could talk about. But we're all very proud. People of Flint, Saginaw, wherever the hell else you've been, very proud of him. And let's bring up Mike Finney.
That's probably the most enlightening introduction I've ever had. First of all, I think you all are just too kind. As I sit here and listen to all the folks talk about your interface and action, interactions with the MEDC, I'm sitting here wondering, so is this the same organization that I'm affiliated with? Because we know, and I know Martin would stand up and say the exact same thing. We have our challenges, right? Doing work and business with state government, and while we're not state government, we essentially represent state government. It's challenging, and I got to tell you, every day we're looking to tear down barriers, to find ways to make it more efficient, more simple, more fair to do business with the state of Michigan. The governor likes to describe it as relentless positive action. You've probably heard him say that if you heard him out on the stump at all. He continues to use relentless positive action as the way we're trying to get things done. And it's pretty basic. Essentially, it's not about taking credit. It's not about pointing blame. It's really about focusing on what we're doing good and trying to build on. Not looking in the rearview mirror, but really trying to look forward in terms of where we want to take the state in this whole reinvention process that we've been going through. And the good news is that we get to play a central role at the MEDC and the other responsibilities that I have in making that happen. So, that's my talk. It's pretty simple. But before I really dive into some of the detail of what we're about and what we're trying to do, I thought I would change it up a little bit. Because I spend so much time in sessions like this, kind of talking at folks. And we never seem to get to all the issues that people really want to hear about. And so, kind of unscripted, I've got a script and I can run through it if there's no questions or comments. But what I'd really like to do is find out what you want to hear about from me. And everything's fair game. We try and be as transparent as we can at MEDC, and the governor really insists on that. So, we don't have anything to hide. We're not trying to hide resources. We're not trying to hide programs. We know we have challenges. So if there's anybody that wants to say, Mike, I really would like to hear you talk about X, I'll try and take a stab at it to make sure that I don't miss it in the course of the script that I want to share with you. Because what I want to talk about are things that we're doing to try and move the needle. Our strategy that we have, the different areas that we touch on, and it is more than just about business development. Cheryl talked about the kind of work we're doing with UMS. And we do a lot of that stuff across the state, and that's not what most people recognize MEDC for. We sponsor a big auto race out in Brooklyn, the MIS, or the Pure Michigan 400. We're going to be a sponsor of the Detroit Grand Prix in partnership with Chevrolet and Roger Penske and so many others. We're going to sponsor a senior PGA over in Benton Harbor, and so many other things that really speak to, the quality of living in our state, because we think that's just as important as anything else, and it's really a draw for talent and keeping the right kind of talent here. So we do a lot of stuff, and I'm going to talk about a lot of that in the time that I have. But who has, one or two issues that you want to make sure that I address? It could be problems, by the way. I'm not afraid of the issues that we have, so I'm happy to listen.
Yes? Like building off something building on something Martin said, what type of work does the MEDC do to accelerate entrepreneurship, as far as the types of things you'd like to see and the types of things that you guys don't really like? And how can an organization or maybe an incubator in progress better suit itself to utilize the MEDC's resources?
All right, I'll remember that. I got that covered. Any other things that you want to make sure that I cover? Yes?
From an accounting perspective, I'm a CPA, and from the accounting industry or from businesses, when they try to communicate with the state, a lot of times it's very difficult to get through to people. There's a lengthy phone index to try to go through, press this button, so to speak. Whereas other states, we do multi-state taxation, and a lot of times we can get a hold of people a lot easier in Virginia or other places. And so to me, there's an opportunity for improvement there. And I don't know if there's anything on the slate for that.
Right, just in case everybody didn't hear it, right? So how do service providers in our state get access to state government in a seamless way? It's very difficult. Sometimes you can get bounced around multiple times before you ever get to somebody that then tells you you're talking to the wrong person, right? So how do we create a more seamless delivery of services and support? So I'm going to talk about that. So far I'm back about it.
I'd be interested in hearing more about the talent acceleration program and how that works.
This is a softball question. More about our talent acceleration.
You're welcome.
We've got an awful lot of stuff going on with respect to talent, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that as well. Anything else?
You know, I actually obviously had some positive comments and dealt with some great people. One of the things I found, though, is often on programs or help, how to get a little more in depth. Because often when you talk about a program with somebody, this could be state agencies, but also the MEDC, you kind of get the flyer answer, you know, and I can read. But then it's like, well, how do you really implement it? You start asking deeper questions, and the people don't know. So it's not only, it's a little bit of maybe education, because once you start getting with your lawyers and accountants and how you're really going to implement it in your company, you're kind of left on your own and it gets expensive. So those lessons learned from the MEDC would be really helpful, how you act, you know, the nuts and bolts of how these programs, beyond the one-page cut sheet.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great comment, right? So how do you get real information out of the MEDC about how to get something done? And the short answer is, believe it or not, we don't necessarily have the depth of understanding of how some of these things work. We have programs that many of our people don't fully understand. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, because I do think there's some efforts we have underway to address that. I'll talk a little bit about what's core to us. And those are things that I think we need to have deep knowledge and deep capability to respond to. And then there are things that we do that are enabling, where we really only need to have that elevator pitch, so to speak. But then we have to have resources someplace in the community, technical expertise, consultants, or others, who can actually provide the depth that's necessary. So we're trying to do things that are core and things that are enabling as a way of addressing the concern that you just raised. So let me try and jump into this. Oh, Dawn has a question.
Yeah, so MEDC's moved away from the model of directly funding earlier stage companies, but it's still a difficult capital market, and some of the programs to bring more capital into the state are taking some time to get up and running and things like that, and so I'd be just really interested in an update on the programs on kind of capital formation and helping startups that are trying to get from each little week or month or milestone to the next. Where's your thought process around all that, and
right.
progress you're making in the areas where you need to do better, and what your focus is there.
Yeah, access to capital is probably the number one question that we get from companies, because for some reason there's a perception out there from businesses that if they ask, the state or MEDC will give them money. And so long, I think we've created that picture among businesses, and it's happened over the years. In fact, if you go from state to state to state, everybody will talk to you about all the money they're going to give you. And it tends to be in the millions of dollars, sometimes tens of millions of dollars. But having been a practitioner for a long time, most of the time it doesn't materialize the way it's laid out. In fact, there's typically disappointment with it. So access to capital is a very big issue. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that, and I may even ask Martin to help me out, because he's got a depth of knowledge beyond the surface. So I'm not going to try and stand up and pretend that I know it all, but Martin knows a whole lot more than I do, so I may defer to him on that question. So let me try and talk. Oh, I'm sorry. One more question.
One quick question, Mike. Because economic development depends on interaction, well, the other sectors of our community, education, healthcare, transportation, everything. But just taking education, how does MEDC interact with K-12, community colleges, four-year institutions to make sure that they're doing what they need to do?
Right. Yeah, so, okay. So I think I've got all the major points that you want me to at least try and stumble through, and I'll do my best. The good news is I think most of it is incorporated into the strategies that we're working on. And so to me, what you just did is really validate the direction that we're going. A big part of trying to figure all this out is to understand what our stakeholders, what our customers really expect of us. And so often, you know, state government really doesn't do that. I mean, we don't take the time to understand what our customers are asking for. So as a part of what Governor Snyder asked me and the rest of my peers to do is to understand what our customers want and need. And then to figure out how to use the limited resources we have to best address those wants and needs. And so the good news is we've been out on a listening tour for the last year, and not just listening and saying, you know, 12 months from now we're going to actually do something, but listening and then trying to immediately build programs or put in place strategies to try and move it forward. So what we've done is we've built a strategy around, you know, the governor has 10 key strategies. If you haven't, you know, looked at those, go to his website, look at them. It talks about, you know, more and better jobs, building more vibrant communities, you know, the relentless positive action. All those are, you know, the 10 key you know, factors that he identified even during the campaign that would drive our state toward success. We looked at those at, you know, from an economic development standpoint, talent, and the other responsibilities that I had, and we identified 7 key strategies that we could then really develop that would allow us to contribute in a significant way to the success that the governor has outlined for our state. So the 7 key strategic areas that we have are entrepreneurship. And a lot of the questions that you've raised center around entrepreneurship. We know that we have to have a vibrant and robust entrepreneurial ecosystem here in our state. If we don't have that, then we're going to continue to be a laggard, right? We're going to continue to be, or to strive to be like Silicon Valley and the Research Triangle and Boston and Austin and all these other places that we consistently hear about. We're just going to continue to be a state that's looking for our path. So we've decided that we're going to build a robust entrepreneurial ecosystem. Martin Dober is our Senior VP for everything entrepreneurial. And that's a new role. And we created it because we wanted to send a message that we're going to start to really step it up. We're going to put in place the kind of tools and resources that businesses need. You know, in my experience at Ann Arbor Spark, the most important service that we provided was what we call business acceleration support to companies. That's not writing checks to companies, but it's providing deep resources, consulting resources, incubation resources, you know, key talent, access to talent, connectedness to companies, and a whole bunch of other things that allow startup companies to be successful. We felt that we were on a wonderful path toward creating that here in Ann Arbor, and the question was, could we scale it at the state level? So that's what we're trying to do. And again, there's a lot of detail behind it, and more than happy to share that, you know, outside of this meeting. But we think we have to build that robust ecosystem. So, you know, building out incubators. We just awarded more than $6 million of support to a variety of incubators around the state. Those are facilities. But, you know, just to have a facility doesn't necessarily make companies successful, because you can go find, you know, a building to squat in at any point in time. You've really got to have this deep service support behind that. You've got to have access to talent. You've got to have access to money. You've got to have access to, you know, first customers or large companies that can give you access. You've got to have access to university, you know, talent and faculty and staff and others so that you have the highest probability of success. We're helping to create that connectedness. You know, we're trying to buy off everybody we can in that food chain and give them a little bit of money to ask them to help. But more importantly, we created a pool of cash. I think it's $3.5 million, Martin. So we created a pool of $3.5 million so that companies could go and get access to high-value services and other resources any place in the state. And in our assessment, Ann Arbor was the only place that was happening through Ann Arbor Spark's Business Accelerator. So we took the Spark model, where we would provide up to $50,000 of services to startup companies, along with facilities and investment capital. Spark manages a $25 million pre-seed fund that makes direct investments in companies. And so we took that and said, we're going to scale it at the state level. So the Small Business and Technology Development Center is the organization that we're using as an enabling tool to help us make the same kind of resources that are available at Ann Arbor Spark available any place in the state to entrepreneurs. So if there's an incubator in Mount Pleasant and there's an entrepreneur that needs key talent that's only available in Ann Arbor, some technical expertise, they can actually hire that consultant and bring that consultant to the incubator in Mount Pleasant so that they can get help. But if the company in Mount Pleasant needs access to pre-seed capital, they can contact Ann Arbor Spark or contact Southwest Michigan First, who both have pre-seed funds that can make investments in companies. So we're trying to connect all these dots so businesses have the highest probability of startup success. Now we still struggle as companies get beyond the pre-seed and into the angel and that first round of venture capital funding. That's still a challenge for us, and we're working on that. And in fact, we've got hundreds of millions of dollars of venture capital available in our state, but it's still not enough given the pipeline that we see. So we think we've got some programs in place. I would encourage you to spend a little bit more time with Martin Dober talking about some of the details of it and some of the other programs that we're working to create. We discovered that we had a program that we call the Permanent Fund at the state. And what's a permanent fund? Well, Cheryl knows this because in the foundation world, it's about for good forever, right? If you're in a foundation, you don't want to give away all your money. You really want to create a corpus and use the gains from that corpus to fund all of your activities. And so we have this permanent fund that has a similar kind of orientation, except we decided we wouldn't do anything with it. So imagine if the community foundation never did any grant making. Wouldn't be much of a foundation, right? They just collect money and never give it out. So we had a similar fund. We decided that we would take that money and start putting it to work, helping our businesses in our state. The money can be used for loans, it can be used for investments in companies, and so we now are in the process of designing a whole portfolio of new programs that will allow us to make direct investments in companies, Dawn, into your question.
I'm looking at my notebook and taking notes, Mike.
We can make direct investments in companies, and we can make loans in companies. But what we want to do is leverage it because we know it's not enough. We have about $80 million in the spirit of full disclosure that we have available to us. That's not enough. How can we turn that 80 million into 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, 500 million? So what we're doing is we're putting it out in tranches and identifying programs that will allow us to leverage it in a very big way. The first program that we kicked off and got approval from the Michigan Strategic Fund to launch is what we're calling a bank of banks. And essentially it's a community reinvestment corporation, right? Some of you probably are familiar with those. They exist around the country. Michigan's never had one. But we think that with $15 to $20 million, we can leverage that upwards of $200 million so that we have a much more robust pool of resources to invest in some of our companies like Dawn's and some of the others that you have here. And that way we maximize this resource. We stretch our money a lot further than we could by simply investing it ourselves. So we've got some creative things, and there's a whole slew of another 4 or 5 other programs. We have a venture matching fund, right? So if you go out and raise venture capital, we're going to be prepared to match it to the tune of $500 million, almost no questions asked. And I'm probably being a little bit liberal when I say no questions asked, because we will look at it and make sure it's a good deal, but essentially we want to make it very easy for you to get access to at least $500 million of additional investment capital in your company. So those are the kind of programs that we're putting in place to get back in the game of making direct investments in some of the really nice and exciting companies that we have here in our state. So we've got a lot going on in the entrepreneurial space. It's an area that I really have great passion about. That was probably the part of the job here in Ann Arbor Spark that I enjoyed most, was tinkering with all these little companies and finding creative ways to give them a little bit more help so they can move the needle a little bit faster. Business growth. Now that's the guts of what MEDC is all about. I mean, that's the 80% of what we do. That's the existing businesses that we have in our state. We have some, 150,000 businesses or so in the state. About 100,000 of those fit a profile that are no longer going to be subject to the business tax in our state. Now, imagine that. 2/3 of the companies in our state will no longer pay a business tax thanks to some really forward thinking by the governor and our legislature. So we eliminated the Michigan business tax. And we now have a flat 6% corporate tax. So if you're a C Corp, you'll pay a 6% flat tax. If you're an LLC or an S Corp or any other corporate structure, you will no longer be subject to the business tax. That's a nice giveaway to the business community. It represents about $1.8 billion and about an 82% reduction in the business tax for companies in our state. Now, I love going out selling that. I mean, that's better than me going out trying to hand out tax credits to companies on a day in and day out basis and telling them, we'll give you a tax credit that you can collect over the next 10 years. And oh, by the way, there's a lot of red tape in this. You probably won't collect the first dollar for 2 or 3 years because of the complexity of these programs. And oh, by the way, if you really need money up front, you got to go find that on your own. We don't have programs that help you. But if you find it, you can then collect these tax credits down the road. That's a much more difficult sell when you really think about it as a business owner. That's not the way we position it, though. That's not the way our peers around the country position it. We position it as this great resource that's available to you right now. And I can tell you, it really doesn't normally work the way companies do. Companies want what we just did with Hyundai here in Ann Arbor. Hyundai wants to expand their facility. They don't have adequate power and clean enough power to build out the facility the way they want. And we discovered that because we decided to talk to Hyundai about their challenges in growing here in Michigan, and in particular in Superior Township. Now, I could have told them the power was bad in Superior Township because I live out there. And I bought a generator a few months after being in my house. So the reality is that was the need that they identified. And so then it was just a question of how much does it cost, and can we come up with a creative way of supporting that. So in the deal that we cut with them, they might have traditionally gotten a $15, $20 million tax credit. So what we're doing is we are making a loan to the community, Superior Township. That's $2.5 million that will build the power substation that they need to now invest and expand their business. So it's building utility infrastructure in the community. And the community agreed to create a local development finance authority, or a TIF district, that will allow them to capture the property taxes, the excess property taxes that are being paid by Hyundai because of their expansion, and to use that to repay our loan. So wait a minute now, we put $2.5 million into the deal, and we're going to get it back. That's a different way of thinking. That's a different way of approaching economic development. Why is it more attractive to the company? Because it gets them the substation today, not in 2 years or 3 years when they finally collect enough tax credits to make it work. So we're really trying to put money where companies need it at most as a part of our new approach to economic development. Economic gardening is what we're calling it. That's just one tool and one approach that we have. And we have a $100 million pool that we can use to finance deals very creatively along those lines. And you'll hear more about deals like that. But Pure Michigan Business Connect and our economic gardening program is not just about giving money to companies. In fact, we think the most valuable part of what we're doing is some of the business connections that we're making. Real examples. So Consumers Energy and DTE Energy were our two kickoff customers as a part of what we call Pure Michigan Business Connect. And we said, well, let's try and do some creative stuff to help businesses grow. And if we can just get more Michigan-based companies doing business with each other, that's the easiest way to grow. You know, how much more sales does it take for you to hire one more employee? If we're trying to get jobs, how many more sales do you need in order for you to have enough revenue to hire one more person so that you can keep growing your business? My rule of thumb is maybe $100,000 of new sales, maybe $200,000 of new sales, depending on the type of business. So Consumers and DTE combined committed to $500 million of new Michigan spend. So at $200,000 for one new job, that's 2,500 new jobs that are going to be created as a result of those two companies making a commitment to buy more Michigan goods and services. So how much tax credits and how much money did we put into that transaction? Zero. But we're taking companies that are connected to us through our Pure Michigan Business Connect program, and we're pointing them toward Consumers Energy, DTE, Myers, Comcast, Barnum Law, Huntington Bank, Fifth Third Bank, and all the other companies that are a part of our Pure Michigan Business Connect program. We've got about 800 companies now that have signed up to be a part of it, both on the supply side and on the purchasing side. You know, companies who want to sell and companies who want to buy. What a neat program. And it doesn't cost the state anything, it just causes us to have to become much smarter about the kind of companies we deal with. When I walk into a company, I need to have some expert eyes that says, if you're an injection molder making parts for the auto industry, I know an aerospace company that needs injection molded parts that I've been talking to, and they're buying them out in California, and you might be able to make them for them. I know a wind company, a wind farm, or whatever it might be. We have to have expert eyes, so we're trying to upgrade our organization to become much more expert in our ability to make these kinds of business connections that we haven't been able to make before. I was over at EMRA. I don't know if any of you know EMRA, over in Ann Arbor Township. They've got some really cool technology involving, laser technology, licensed from the University of Michigan, right? They're a wonderful little company here in our state. And so I met with their CEO a couple weeks ago. And he wanted to talk about Pure Michigan Business Connect. And as he was talking to me about, all the cool innovations they have, we were very quickly able to identify about 4 companies that they will likely be able to do business with. And I'm talking significant business with, right? And Martin right now, through his team, are making all the connections for him with the companies that we've targeted. And I think it's going to turn into something big. That's what Pure Michigan Business Connect is all about. We're also helping companies with export. I mean, other than the auto-related stuff that we do back and forth across the bridge to Canada, boy, bridge to Canada, wow. What an interesting deal going on there. I'm glad I'm not worth $1.5 billion right now. I could go to jail. But anyway, we send stuff back and forth across the bridge to Canada, but we really don't focus on the export potential that our state has. Think about it, agriculture, right? Agriculture is one of our top 2 or 3 industries in the state. And we're not focusing on the world in terms of what that could mean. So we're helping companies with export, not just within agriculture, but across a lot of different industry sectors. We're helping companies get access to the financing they need to do export through Ex-Im Bank. We're helping companies get access to talent as a part of Pure Michigan Business Connect. So we've got a wonderful portfolio built out. That's access to capital, it's access to talent, export, customer-to-customer relationships. Pure Michigan Business Connect has become a new way of doing economic development. We know it's starting to catch on because I'm starting to hear from my peers around the country who want to learn more about what we're doing and what's contributing to Michigan's turnaround success. Now, it helps that our economy is improving when the auto companies start to improve. So we've gotten, I think, a break in that regard. But it's allowing us to launch this program in ways that we wouldn't have been able to but for a little bit of positive economic success. So existing businesses are our primary focus, and we're trying to do it by leveraging every relationship that we can with businesses. I was with 80 CEOs last night at a dinner in Detroit. I mean, you name it, it was a who's who of CEOs in Detroit. And it was wonderful to have that kind of access and to hear the kind of challenges and opportunities that they are prepared to help us with. And these are 80 folks who are Michigan's biggest cheerleaders, by the way. These are not folks who are down on Michigan. They're talking about their commitment. They're talking about, investing in and buying buildings in Detroit. I mean, we've all heard about Dan Gilbert's, he's bought, 3 million square feet of office space in downtown Detroit. There's something happening. And it's happening because we've got all these positive CEOs now who want to help us make the kind of connections and offer themselves up as resources to be a part of Pure Michigan Business Connect. That's the business growth area. Access to capital, I've talked about a little bit. Vibrant community is another very important thing for us. I'm spending an awful lot of time in Southeast Michigan, in Detroit, in Flint, in Benton Harbor, Grand Rapids. All of our urban cores, we've got to ensure that we've got vibrant urban cores so that people want to be here. I mean, young people, I was talking, young lady, Deidre? Katrina. Talking with Katrina, Rob introduced me to her before. Recent graduate from the University of Michigan. We want her to stay here, and every person like her. But they're not going to stay if we don't have vibrant cities for them to live in, job opportunities for them to take advantage of, the connectedness that we need. And I really appreciate Rob making the introduction. And now my job is to find an opportunity for her. It may not be with MEDC, but it ought to be with some of the other companies that I touch on a day in and day out basis. And literally, we have 78,000 jobs that are open and available in Michigan right now. Go to our website, mitalent.org. 78,000 jobs available right now. And what we're struggling with is a talent mismatch, where we have, we need software engineers, we need IT professionals, etc. And we're struggling to get those folks to understand that Michigan is, in fact, the place they ought to be. So we're digging in and building relationships with our universities. Someone asked a question about how we're working with the universities. We're reaching into the universities in a very aggressive way to get them to focus on helping us keep their talent connected to the state of Michigan. We have programs that we call, like Michigan, where we know a lot of our young people leave the state. I got a son at Arizona State right now, and he's actually studying computer science. Now, what's the likelihood I'm going to get him back here? Especially right now. But this summer, I'm already lining it up. Right? He's coming home for the summer, and I'm going to introduce him to all my friends who are looking for IT professionals, and I'm going to try and get him in. I've already told him the software languages he needs to make sure he gets done this year. So he's in his second course of Java. He's going to take Ruby skills. I mean, I'm telling him these are the ones that represent the biggest opportunities for you. But I'm giving anybody those kind of tips, not just myself. Every young person I'm talking to, I'm telling them, here's where the opportunities are. And that's what we're doing as an organization. That's what we're trying to do by connecting with our universities, our community colleges, our K-12 institutions. And we've got programs that we're driving to help that. We're actually recruiting for a staff person right now that will be our primary liaison with all the universities that we have in the state. We feel it's that important that we have a liaison that can help us figure out how best to take advantage of all the resources we have in the state. When I talk about those 78,000 jobs, by the way, it's not just IT professionals. We need welders. We need skilled machinists. And that's where our community colleges and our K-12 system comes in. We've got to cause young people to understand that working in skilled trades and semi-skilled jobs are equally as rewarding as being a PhD physicist. It just depends on your skill set and your interests. You know, when my dad came to Michigan back in 1952, he went to work at General Motors in Flint. He became a welder, interestingly enough. And he provided a wonderful quality of living for my family, right? So why shouldn't we encourage some of our young people to consider the same thing, especially when those jobs are abundant in our state right now? And so many of our kids are doing nothing. In fact, they're doing things that are a drain on our society, right? We hear about it every day. But if we find the right match for these young folks, we can make it happen. And mitalent.org is our resource that we're trying to use to help make those talent connections so that young folks understand that they can actually take on those professions and make money. So vibrant community is very important. We're trying to do it for our young people so we can keep them here. I've talked a lot about talent, but that's one of our key objectives. Image is another one, right? I mean, I remember Rob helped us out in the transition team. We didn't tell you about that, but I wanted somebody that could really provide us with some interesting advice and counsel and help facilitate sessions that we were having to try and figure out how to move this whole MEDC thing forward. And he did such a good job in the transition, he actually helped us with our strategy too. So Rob knows this strategy as good as I do because he helped facilitate it for us. But this image thing was one that's very difficult to overcome. Because Michigan, around the globe, there's 3 brands that are very much recognized that create the image of Michigan. Right? Well, the state of Michigan is one. I mean, we're known as a manufacturing state, as an automotive state, and the world knows that. Detroit is 2. And the image of Detroit, I think we all know where that's at. It's not been very favorable. And interestingly enough, Ann Arbor is 3. When I go around the world and I talk about, if I have anything with a block M on it, everybody knows what I'm talking about without me saying anything, right? So we've got these 3 brands that we discovered are very powerful on a statewide or worldwide basis. And how can we take advantage of those brands and get those brands, focused in a way that's very positive? So we're using Pure Michigan, right? Who hasn't seen some of the Pure Michigan advertising and promotion that we're doing? I've yet to find anybody. We have folks who send us emails, right, telling us that they don't watch much TV, but when they hear the Pure Michigan promotional activities, they immediately tune in. I mean, it's catchy, it grabs you, it pulls you in. It's one of the top 10 brands of all time for state promotions. It's up there with, the Big Apple and what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, Virginia's for lovers. Pure Michigan is right up there as one of the top 10 brands of all time. So we're building on that. In fact, we've gotten the state of Michigan now to take on Pure Michigan as a brand for the entire state. If you had looked at us before, each department had its own kind of unique way of messaging. If you look at us now, everybody's messaging around the Pure Michigan brand. Which brings me to my last item, which is about seamless service delivery, right? This idea of calling the state of Michigan and getting bounced around and bounced around and bounced around and never getting to who you need is a very important issue for us. So we're trying to fix that. We're trying to create a very seamless process for businesses to get access, for our citizens to get access to us. And it just so happens that I'm chairing a group called the Interdepartmental Collaborative Committee. So back in March, this is one of the dialogues we were having inside the governor's cabinet, and he came up with this brilliant idea that he would form this committee, and he would ask the economic development guy to chair it. And the idea is that we're focused on everything, jobs, talent, community development. Why not ask every department to make that a priority? And so he did. He formed this committee. I've been chairing it for the last year. In fact, yesterday I sent him our annual report, and it was much more favorable than I even expected. The kind of connectedness that we've created across departments. I can now pick up the phone. In fact, I don't even have to do it. Anybody on my team can pick up the phone or send an email to someone at DEQ, right? And in most states, the Department of Environmental Quality and to businesses, that's a tough one, right? I mean, they are all about regulation. It's not about customer service. If you contact MEDC with an issue with the Department of Environmental Quality, we can get those issues resolved very efficiently. I mean, we're taking care of, I had a problem with a company over in Holland that's looking to create a couple thousand jobs here in our state. And they were trying to get some permitting done on a site, and they had been struggling with it. They contacted us, and within 30 days, DEQ had their issue resolved. And it's the kind of thing that would have normally taken 9 months to a year to resolve. And in that time frame, what are we losing? We're losing hundreds of jobs, and potentially losing the talent that it's going to take to fill those key jobs when that company is good up and running. So now that company can get up to speed much sooner. DNR, right? They run all of our park systems and all of our hunting and fishing and outdoor activities. DNR now is branding everything Pure Michigan. They have a Pure Michigan passport. I mean, they're doing a lot of cool stuff with marketing support from the MEDC. I mean, we're working in ways that we've never worked before. We're really trying to create that seamless environment. And we're carrying it not just inside of state government, we're also taking it out to all of our economic development partners. So we have a network of economic development partners around the state. We call it our Collaborative Development Council. And they're there to enable a lot of things that we can't do because we don't have feet on the street in every community. So we're providing them with funding support and other support. We have about 30 of our staff that were headquartered at Lansing. We now have them headquartered at our partner locations throughout the state. And boy, folks thought I was nuts when I first announced it. Right? We're going to have our people go and work at someone else's location and take direction from them instead of taking it from, you know, staff at senior management at MEDC. And guess what? After we got the first one done, it got a little bit easier. We wanted to do 10 by the end of the year. We ended up with 30. That's how excited folks got about it once we did it, right? They realized that people like me and Martin are not very good managers. They can get better management from the folks out in the field than they're going to get from us. Because trying to direct someone's activities who's up in Traverse City, I don't really know what's going on up there. Martin doesn't know what's going on up there. But the folks on the ground, right, at the Economic Development Organization in Traverse City really knows what their needs are, and they know what they need us to do. And they can tell our folks, here's what we need from MEDC. And our folks can then work back into the organization to get the resources to support it. These are simple things that we're doing to create a very seamless support structure for our businesses, for our citizenry, in ways that we haven't done it before. I mean, we're reinventing it. And I'm very bullish about, you know, economic development and what we can do as a state to reinvent ourselves and become a best-in-class state, as opposed to being number 48, 49, and 50 in all these key metrics that most of us look at. So that's my long-winded story. And there's just an awful lot of detail behind it. I hope I touched on all the questions. I kind of looked around the room to make sure I eyeballed everyone who had one, and I think I got to the questions. But if I didn't, I'm more than happy to try and fill in any of the gaps that we may have. I don't know how much time you have, Rob.
I forgot, we can go to 8:45 really.
So lots of time for questions. Yes?
Hello. I did miss the first part of your presentation, so you may have touched upon this. But knowing that youth is the future of Michigan, as it is anywhere, are there any programs in place for youth, well, young people, let's say in their early 20s, and there are many of them, who didn't have the opportunity to go to college or any higher education, and they're floundering. They're knocking around from one McDonald's or other kind of minimum wage job to another, and they might have some inherent talents and skills, but they don't have any family mentoring or other support. Is there anything in the state that helps young people like this build some skills in a particular area so they can build a viable career?
Yeah, so in November, Governor Snyder delivered one of his special messages centered around talent. And a lot of what was embedded in that special message is intended to address the challenge that you just described. So are there programs out there right now? The answer is actually yes. They're not as effective as they need to be. There's a lot of resources within the K-12 system that has existed for many, many years. A lot of those programs are not as robust as they were at one point, so we're going to try and get those reinvigorated. But then as you move into the community college level, our community colleges have a plethora of programs for exactly that kind of student. And many of them are not intended to earn a degree, some of them are, but they are designed to help young people get skills very quickly that they can then immediately get into the workforce. For example, if you are interested in being a welder in our state, many of our community colleges have programs And most of the students who go through the program are actually snapped up within months of getting started. The minute they learn what an acetylene torch is, they got a job. I mean, that's kind of how it's happening with the welding profession. Within some of the machinist trades, for example, right now, our manufacturing companies are really struggling to find the talent they need. Because it's not like it was when my dad came to Michigan in 1952. He didn't have to do anything. In fact, a lot of his friends and relatives who came up from Alabama with him couldn't even read and write. But they were able to get jobs in the factories because, you know, we didn't have the kind of technology and other things that you have now that required you to have a skill set that's different. But now, you really do need those students to have skills that they could probably only learn either in like a skills center at the K-12 level or at a community college setting. So the resources are there. Getting our kids directed to them is a big part of the effort that we will have underway. And again, mitalent.org is actually the tool that we intend to use to get us there. It's right now in its what I'll call, you know, version 1 or 1.0. Version 2.0 will come out in the June timeframe, where we're going to add some features to it that will allow students to do much more career planning than they're able to do right now. But there is a limited amount of career planning that students can actually do in mitalent.org right now. So it's on the radar screen. The governor has challenged us to take a lead in figuring out how to get these programs up to speed, and we've got a number of things that's on the drawing board.
Like Steve Gill, Steve, you raise your hand, is trustee of Washington Community College, so that's you might want to talk to Steve.
Well, yeah, Steve, go ahead, jump in, because I know you know more about this than I do.
Just to confirm what you said, Washington Community College has one of the best welding programs in the country, and we can't keep students because they, as you say, as soon as they take the course, they're grabbed up.
Bob, we'll come to Don next.
Hey, Mike, I would just like to thank you and Governor Snyder, the leadership that you provided in this state. It's making a difference. And on behalf of the Michigan Bankers Association, yes, I know you all think bankers were bad and we don't lend money. I really appreciate what you've done to work with us to put programs together to be able to help companies that through these very difficult times have eaten up all of their collateral and want to grow, but they can't. And I'll tell you the difference in the leadership that you've provided to sit down with you guys and work and put programs together that are up and running. I just can't thank you enough. So I just want to say you are making a difference and you are helping banks to help their local economy. So just thank you.
Absolutely. I see a couple different bankers here in the audience. The U.S. Treasury Department gets wind of the program and we introduce it to them. U.S. Treasury then commits $1.5 billion to scale the program across the entire United States and all of our territories, even the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and others. Imagine that, in Michigan, an innovator. We came up with a program that got scaled to the national level, and our team, Martin's team, ended up writing the rules for the program. So don't you think we have the inside track? We got the first $80 million. We've already deployed about $35 million of it. In fact, I got a notice yesterday from U.S. Treasury that they were sending us our second tranche of roughly $27 million so we can continue the program. And basically, we have companies who don't have sufficient collateral to grow a business. And that happens all the time. We know what's been happening with, you know, the value of real estate and the value of personal property that businesses need to go out and buy. The day you buy it, it's worth some fraction of what you paid for it, right? Or what you need to invest to make it work. So we decided that in order to get the banking transactions done, we provide that collateral support. We fill the collateral cap. Kind of a no-brainer at that point for a bank, right? Because their collateral is covered. Now they can make the loan, and the companies that are trying to grow can grow. Pretty basic stuff. Or we need to participate in the loan and be a partner in the loan. We buy a part of the loan from the bank. Very simple stuff. And it's working in ways that most states have. And by the way, there's only 6 other states that have effectively implemented it already. And we've been at it now for almost a year. And it's working beautifully in Michigan. And our team is actually consulting with several other states on how to get these programs implemented. In fact, Treasury contacted our team to help out the U.S. Virgin Islands to get their program up and running. Now, it's a real scramble to figure out who's going to go and help them. So we had a lot of volunteers for that assignment. But a guy named Paul Brown, if you haven't met Paul Brown, Eric Hanna, and some of our team, who are the hands-on folks, who are the bankers in our organization that's doing it, you ought to meet him if you're looking for any kind of debt financing to grow your company. because it's a really cool program and it's probably the most effective tool that we've got. And it's being leveraged at an incredible rate. So we've got $80 million, but our banking institutions in the state have committed billions of dollars of debt support for the companies that we have in the state. Imagine that. Suddenly we go from having virtually no access to capital to having billions of dollars of access to capital because of a program like the State Small Business Collateral Support Initiative, or SSBCI is the name of the program. So, to all the bankers, we appreciate you. You guys are not as bad as everybody says. Go on.
So, I want to talk about the welding thing for 1 second, because things that you don't know about me, I spent like 20 years of my career doing welding art and joining R&D at an international level, and I worked at Ford Motor Company and ran around to their plants solving welding problems, and I started my first company based on welding technology. And I just want to say that this welding thing is a big deal, because something like half the world's economic product involves welding and joining processes. They may be a small part of that, but you can't get the rest of it without the welding and joining. And I think focusing just on like vocational training at community colleges is super important and valuable, but actually for years welding R&D has gotten very short shrift because it's kind of viewed as this old, boring industrial thing and not like really cool like nanotechnology and stuff like that. But there's a great program at Ferris State that trains people to the next level up. You know, so you're kind of working grade welding engineers and stuff like that, which there's a shortage of also, a huge shortage. But there's a huge opportunity for the whole ecosystem, from the community colleges to the Ferris State kind of level, and then to try and get something going at one of your research universities, Wayne State or Michigan State, or here at U of M, if it's not too gross and boring for them, Marvin. And to make Michigan a big leader in this. You know, Ohio State dropped the ball on their welding engineering program a few years ago, and RPI is not as invested as it used to be. There's a big opportunity here for Michigan to actually take this asset that you've already got and the success that you'll already see and do a little bit of promotion and investing in that and make a big deal out of it, because you know, I worked in this area for a long, long time, and there's a big demand and very little supply.
Absolutely. So I mean, that's just good input. We'll take it and we'll try and see if we do something with it. Larry.
Mike, in the outreach that you mentioned earlier, other states for ideas and building more relationships.
Yeah, I think Mike is Roger Rayle is on the video back here. He needs to pick up the questions.
Mike, in the outreach that you mentioned doing to other states.
Hold it close, Larry.
Hey, Larry, I know you can expect.
More profile.
Do you have a formal program to outreach to companies in California or Arizona or Texas, or is it kind of an ad hoc program? How does that work? Because there's probably a lot of people around and in this room that might be able to contribute to that.
Yeah. So the one thing that I didn't talk about was you know, attracting business, going after it and hunting for business and trying to bring business into the state. And we do it. We just kind of keep it quiet, right? Because frankly, we really want to focus on existing businesses and provide as much support as we can to existing businesses. But a part of the economic development model is, in fact, searching worldwide for businesses that are in a growth mode and looking to cite alternative locations. We're not out there trying to recruit companies that are in other states to come to Michigan. It's just dumb. It's a waste of time, and that's where you get into all these crazy incentive packages and everything else to bring companies, because you're trying to get Sears to move from, you know, Chicago to Michigan. And what does Chicago do, or what does the state of Illinois do? They give them a special tax credit program to keep them there. So it never really works. But if a company like Google or Barracuda Networks, they need to grow. They're in a growth mode, and they need to find other locations around the country and around the world. Don't we want to be on the radar screen as one of the desirable places for them to set up a satellite? So our approach is really focused around identifying companies that are in a growth mode, and then selling those companies on the value proposition that Michigan has to offer. You know, talent, image, or you know, great quality of living, you know, warm business climate, et cetera, et cetera. And so we sell that to those companies when they're in a growth mode. The challenge is figuring out what companies are in a growth mode. Now, if you could do that, you could sell your services to every economic development organization in the world and make a fortune by just having the inside track on where the deals are, where the companies are growing at. So we decided that, reading newspapers and keeping a, ear to the ground and those kind of things, that doesn't work. That's what most of my peers do. Most of my peers find out about deals because they hear about them through the grapevine. And at the point you hear about it through the grapevine, it's too late. Guaranteed. I can't tell you how many emails I get from people about projects where some company has announced that their intention of moving. Jimmy John's, Sears, you name it. I mean, all these have come to me from a variety of different people. And at the point that you heard about it, it's way too late. Trust me. We have yet to see one of those things ever turn into anything when someone refers it to us. But what really works, and I'll give great compliments to my friends at the University of Michigan, because they got it right from day one. I remember talking to President Coleman and Marvin Parnes and Steve Forrest and Ken Nesbitt and Cynthia Wilbanks and so many others. Here's what we're trying to do. We want you to give us access to your alumni. We want you to turn over your alumni list to us so we can go and bug all your alumni and get everything we want out of them. And after they stopped laughing, they probably thought I had lost the screw, right? Because universities aren't going to turn over their alumni list to anybody. But when we drill it down a little bit, I don't want access to their alumni list. What I want them to do is I want them to identify alumni who are situated in senior management roles within corporate America. And to the extent that their interactions with those alumni identify opportunities that might be a fit for Michigan, or in my case it was Ann Arbor, we want you to just get us connected to them. And all of a sudden the light bulb went on, and suddenly I'm getting all kinds of connectedness that we otherwise wouldn't have had. I mean, the most significant thing that President Coleman did, I never told her this, so I'm sure, she called me up one day, or someone from her office called me and said, President Coleman, Mike, would like you to join her for a lunch with one of our really, high-value alumni. And we're working on a significant gift. This was during the big, fundraising campaign that was underway. And of course, I understand this is not for me to go and start, putting the squeeze on this company, this individual located business here. I'm there to help tell the story of U of M's role in the community and economic development, et cetera. And she said, well, and the person is Charlie Munger. And so, believe it or not, I didn't know who Charlie Munger was at the time. And then I think, well, I'm going to be one of probably a couple hundred people, at some big fancy luncheon that the president is having. But I'll go because President Coleman asked. So I get there, and there's 10 people in the room. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, what's this? And President Coleman sits me next to Charlie Munger. Now, by the way, in between the time that I got the call and the luncheon, it was a couple months, I took the time to figure out who Charlie Munger was. So I came to that meeting pretty pumped, right? Because now I know this guy's the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, right? Most people know Warren Buffett, but they don't know that his alter ego is a guy named Charlie Munger. And she sat me next to him, had a wonderful dialogue with him. This guy's in his 80s and he knew more about technology than I did. And of course, we know what Berkshire Hathaway represents in terms of potential. And it created an opportunity for me to build a connection with this incredibly powerful person. And that's happened over and over and over again. Companies like Google are here because of that connection. Barracuda Networks is here because of that connection. Advanced Photonics is here because of that connection. GE is here because of that connection. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office that was just announced in Detroit is here because of that kind of connectedness that we get from the universities. So the reality is, the secret sauce in how to get connected to businesses early enough to land their opportunities is to get our network of relationships to give us a heads up. That's the only way you'll get upstream far enough to talk to companies when they're in a decision-making mode. And that's how we do it. So when I met with 80 CEOs last night, I don't care about networking with them. I want to listen to their dinner conversations. I want to know who they were talking with last week. I want to know who in their network is talking about growing so that I can then get an introduction to those folks. And they need to help facilitate that because obviously I can't just pick up the phone and call Charlie Munger. I can now, but I couldn't before and get him to respond. So that's how we do it. So international business development is important. We're now using our governor to help us. I mean, he went to Asia with us. We went to China, Korea, Japan. We've already had a few deals closed as a result of that. In March, we're going to be heading over to Germany and Italy for a European visit. And we've already got some very interesting things teed up for that. So we're using, I think, our best salesperson to help us get access in places that we could never get access before. But it's about doing that legwork to get ourselves on the radar screen of business decision makers before a decision is announced, whether they're relocating or something else. We got to get upstream, and we need all of you to help us get those early access point. So if you're thinking about a conversation you had with someone who's about to grow their business, please contact us so we can talk to them about the value proposition of being here at the state of Michigan. Other questions? Yes.
I was at Detroit New Tech on Wednesday and listened to Sam Hogue talk about his experience creating, growing, and finally selling GiftSet. It's a startup, 2.5 years. He had the idea, funded it by himself, and then sold it at the right time. And now he's on to other ventures. And in fact, he's got his own kind of like a venture capital effort going. But he said that if he had not graduated from college without debt, he would never have started this venture. So I'm wondering if you've thought about the lost opportunity cost of having so many students in debt when they graduate from college, and what effect that's had. You know, there's all these opportunities that would have been there had they graduated like I did, debt-free. How many here had student debts when they graduated? How many here have relatives or know of young people who have a lot of student debt? That's a problem, because we're stifling the young people, and some other states it might be cheaper to go there. We're creating all this great talent, we're educating them, and then they leave, and they're not getting support to start companies here. I know you're only about 1/5 effort into entrepreneurship, but have you thought about how to affect a better environment for students coming out of college debt-free?
Yeah, so the answer is no. As far as my responsibilities, we have not spent any time focused on this question of student debt coming out of college. But we are spending a lot of time focused on student entrepreneurs. In fact, during my time at Arbor Spark, we worked very closely with the University of Michigan and its student incubator known as TechArb. Essentially driven and funded out of the College of Engineering. And we have worked with, and I think Spark still continues to work very closely with that group of students. We're doing the same thing. I'm an alumnus of CMU, and I'm actively participating in their programs with the student entrepreneurs up there. So we have it on the radar screen, but the point that you're making with respect to the debt that students face, that's not something that we are attempting to address via MEDC.
Mike, I have a question for you. A young woman said she's providing training from Zingerman's to MEDC. Why would you contract with Zingerman?
Yeah, so part of what we have to do as state government, and I didn't talk about, is we have to change the culture, right? When I talk about the seamless service delivery and all that other stuff, if we don't change the culture of state government, it'll never happen. So the governor has set out as one of his key strategies is to really make this cultural change within state government. And MEDC is a nice little organization that you can pilot stuff in. And so we're doing a number of pilots. Like my entire management team all have someone serving as a coach for them, right? I really believe in individual coaches. I've had one for about 30 years. I never tell a lot of folks that because I want everybody to think I'm just this wonderfully smart guy that knows how to get everything done. The reality is I know that I run into issues all the time where I can't necessarily talk to my wife, my boss, a peer, or someone else. But if I have a confidant that I can go to, that's smart, that understands, that can talk about the issues that I have and the challenges that I have, I usually can get to the right decision. So I've had someone working with me as a coach for an awful long time, and it's really turned out to be a great tool. So when we got to MEDC, I felt that our management team as a whole really could use some support. It's a very different organization. In Arbor Spark, we were like 13 people. And all of a sudden, I'm at MEDC, we got now a $900 million budget and about 1,000 people, and I mean it's crazy in terms of scale. How do you manage all that? And how do you build a management team that can really figure out how to do that? How do you change our own cultural thinking, right? So we entered into this program, so we got our management team with individual coaches. And Rob, in the spirit of full disclosure, is one of the coaches that we have. We have about 6 coaches altogether that's assisting our management team. But we also are doing things at the staff level. We're continuing to drive it down. We've got a program we call Great Managers that, again, Rob has helped with about 30 of our real rising stars in the organization that we can see great management potential from. We're trying to help them understand how to manage up, how to manage peers, how to manage down, so that we get the maximum effectiveness out of the organization. It's amazing to me how many folks who are in management roles, everybody thinks they can supervise others and they can manage down. The reality is we usually get that wrong. Managing peers is much more difficult. Managing up almost never happens. And I need people who know how to manage me. And so I want a team that knows how to manage up. Because if they don't, they're not going to maximize my effectiveness, right? I mean, the governor and I have worked together. This is my third time working with the governor. We figured out how to work together, right? I spend as much time as possible trying to help him understand ways that he can help me get the job done. That's managing up. So we have that going with our Great Managers program. And then most recently, we've started to drill down into the rest of our workforce, and we're using Zingtrain as one of the resources. I've gotten exposed to Zingtrain over the years. I mean, many of you have. It's a phenomenal tool about great customer service and how to get connected to your customers in ways and think like them and have empathy for them and so on. And so we are just viewing this as a way for us to really start to change the culture of the organization. My goal, before I leave MEDC, is to have it be one of the most sought after places to be as a profession among companies in the state of Michigan, right? And we know there's companies like Quicken Loans and others who are already of that stature that are great places to be, great places to work. You've got to have the right attitude, you've got to have a culture that thinks about serving customers and so on. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And that's why we've engaged Zingerman's. I don't know if that's going to be the tool we use across all of state government, because like the Zingerman's #2, it's not cheap. But we also know that it's a very high quality service. And because high quality, you can pay a little bit more for very high quality things and get maximum impact from it. But we're also using other resources that Rob and others have helped us identify. So we start to build this culture throughout the organization. We don't talk a lot about it because it's very internal. But we know that we have to do it if we're going to change state government from being a big bureaucracy into something that can in fact be viewed as a tremendous resource to our citizens. I mean, I marvel when I pick up the papers and folks are complaining about state workers make too much money and they're lazy and all this other stuff. Imagine beating up on your employees all the time. That's what the citizenry does with state employees. We beat up on them all the time. And I'm not saying it's not deserved, by the way. But what I'm saying is we have to get to the point that our customers are actually supporting us. When I was in the private sector, my customers who didn't like me, guess what? They disappeared. That's what's been happening with state government. So if we can make this turn and suddenly our customers like us and they're talking about us in favorable ways, we got a chance of growing our population, growing our businesses, and reinventing the state along the lines of what the governor has talked about. So that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, we're at 8:45 and we should wrap up. And Mike, you've been active. Maybe people could talk about how to follow you. I know you're active on Twitter. What's your Twitter?
Yeah, my Twitter is Michael A. Finney. This is my full name, Michael A. Finney. Facebook, I think it's the same thing. If you send me an invite for like LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or something like that, I always check them out first. So if you're a scoundrel, you won't get an accept. So some of you probably did not get my accepts. Please understand, I view you as a scoundrel. But most of those I accept. And I have a lot of folks, and I'm constantly, when I find a few minutes and I see something interesting, read something interesting, have news to share, I try and get it out among my network as quick as possible. Jobs and other stuff, I try and do that. And we're really trying to use social media as a way of really making the connections to our customers along the lines of what the governor talked about. And you're going to see a lot more of that coming out of us in this year. We're shifting away from this startup and reinvention mode, and now we're really getting into implementation of all these key strategies that the governor has laid out over the last year or so.
And if people, there's a lot of interesting things going on among the people here. If they want to post things on Facebook, whatever, I know you're using Pure Michigan for news. I mean, is there other places where people should be sharing good news about things that are happening in Michigan, trying to improve the image and get the good news, good works out to people?
Yeah, our website, if you send us stuff, and via our website, we're trying to get interesting news posted. If you've got interesting stories about your business that you want to tell, you're going to start seeing a regular drumbeat of interesting stories where we're profiling companies and helping to get their message out about the exciting things they're doing. I mean, these are just some of the things that we're trying to do to really help Michigan companies get greater exposure. We had two companies in Washington, D.C. yesterday with the president. I don't know if you saw that or not. Galaxy Solutions in Detroit, and what's the ski company, the snowshoe company, Mark? The one that's making the molded snowshoes up in the UP. I'm forgetting the name of the company. But we had two companies at the White House yesterday with their president talking about some of the cool things that they're doing to reinvent themselves and to sell U.S.-made products and so on. And we're featuring those kind of things as a profile via our website. So that's the best way to do it. Send us your stories and we'll help get them profiled.
Send it to you or
through the website. If you go to our website.
Pure Michigan.
Yeah, go to our website, MichiganAdvantage.org.
Okay. So it's not Pure Michigan.
Yeah, MichiganAdvantage.org.
Okay. And we're also going to be posting this talk. Roger Rayle has been posting these videos the last several months. He's one of our partners. And I also want to say that we are adding a written version of this. Mary Lou Olds, right? Raise your hand. Is a marketing and a journalist, and she's working with us to try to get these out in a written form to summarize the talk. So you can come to my website, robertpassick.com, and you can access all of this. So we're trying to keep this going. One other thing I want to mention, Cindy mentioned young people, and Hadley, Lord, raise your hand, Hadley and Brad, Labby, a few other people are going to help launch emergingleadersconnect.com. So we're going to be having quarterly meetings just focused on the under 40 or so crowd. I don't want to exclude anybody. But the idea is, how do we help young leaders, emerging leaders in the state? And United Bank is going to sponsor those talks. So they're going to provide this kind of venue again, but it's going to be exclusively for the young people in the state. So if you have any ideas or you want to be involved in that, let me know, because we're just in the planning stages of that. And you can talk to Hadley or Brad or me, or David also is going to be working with it, David. So anybody else in the room, I don't want to miss anybody. I've talked to Adam, I guess you're in that as well. So any other announcements, just the cool things going on? I know, Martin, you brought a brochure.
You're the first group to get these, a new booklet on innovation at the University of Michigan. If anyone would like one, we have a big pile. We passed some around, so please.
Roger?
ACE, Annual Collaboration for Entrepreneurship, is January 31st, Tuesday, from 2 to 9 p.m. at Skyline High School. We expect about 1,000 people there.
That's a very cool event, yeah.
And I'm coordinating the video for that, and if anybody wants to help with either equipment or bandwidth, apparently bandwidth is a problem at Skyline, or if they want to help with run some of the video equipment. We got 2 sets of 4 breakout sessions, and we're going to try to video all of that and even live stream it if possible, so that people can be in 2 places at once.
Real quick, a couple more, David and Deb.
Talking about an entrepreneurial culture and vibe within Michigan, I'm part of a company called Benzinga. We're 2-year-old financialmedia.com in Southfield. We're about to pull in $8 to $10 million in March from Lightbank, which is a venture capital firm in Chicago started by the founders of Groupon. So there's a big vibe along with Detroit Venture Partners locally here that I'm trying to turn Detroit into another hub of Silicon Valley. So that's some good news to watch out for.
Great. Deb?
It's been great listening about the relationship and the collaboration between business and the public sector. And I think that you also would all agree that there are cultural changes, just like you said, that are important to empowering those efforts. So I'd like to tell you about some efforts this weekend called Bridging 8 Mile, 2 one-day events, Saturday and Sunday in downtown Detroit, based upon the premise that if you bring people together from wherever, from different cultures, ethnicities, ages, whatever, and let them see that we are more alike than we are different, magic happens. If you're interested, Bridging 8 Mile, just Google it. And
that's funny. People think of South 8 Mile as the poor section. Well, I grew up just a little bit north of 8 Mile. And Bridging 8 Mile meant going to Sherwood Forest and all that high rent stuff. So the whole other image back then, I'll tell you. Any others? I'll make a quick promotion for this program I have, which is Goal Achievers Connect. And I'm trying to put together a program. It's not just about achieving your goals at work, but about reaching your full potential as a human being, discovering your passion, and creating a community around that. So there's going to be another preview February 7th. At my office. I know a couple of you, raise your hands if you were at the first one, Brad and Deb, a few other people, Michael, so if you have any questions. And any other announcements? If you're looking for a job right now, or raise your hand. We won't have a chance to announce it, but anybody seeking employment? Ellen, okay.
Diane Shelton.
Diane, what are you looking for?
I'm a sales, business development.
Okay.
And that's what I'm working
And Ellen?
I'm billing myself as an information technology generalist. I have a smattering of understanding about all things technology.
Yeah. We had Katrina back there, who's our recent grad and looking for interesting work in a variety of things, right, Katrina?
Yes, I'm pretty open. Organizational studies and French are my degrees, so.
Okay.
You need something.
Anybody else? All right. Well, Mike, it's been a great pleasure to get to know you better, and now I know that you really. Please, you're all welcome. Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, the governor is calling this mentoring for this month, right?
Yes. It's Mentoring Month in Michigan. I don't know if you've seen the announcement from Governor Snyder. So I just encourage you, either whether you have a formal business mentoring program or a personal one, to mentor all those young entrepreneurs that we keep talking about, emerging leaders within our communities. Like I said, if you want some connections to some of those people, please by all means send Rob or I an email and we'll try to connect you with some young leaders that we know that are looking for some mentorship.
All right, thanks again. We'll see you all next month.